Tom and I met each other at England Air Force Base, Louisiana, flying. We're both in A flight, and we're flying A7s, and we got to spend a lot of time together.
So this is me at Benoit, and I graduated from the academy in 1966, Garrett, and went off to pilot training, and we were pretty full of ourselves. If we got an F-100, that meant we were at the top, or pretty close to the top of our class. And if the Thunderbirds were flying the F-100, we thought we were big stuff, and we weren't. And fighter pilots generally, especially young fighter pilots, are fearless because, you know, you're not going to die. You're not going to get me. If they get somebody else, and we had a guy die in our squadron, Lynn Hoffman, and you just kind of mentally say to yourself, I wouldn't do that. I'm better than that. And that's how you cope with it. I don't think that works for an old man. So this is just out in front of the squadron. There we go. Okay, it's a tighter shot to take a picture of all of us. I want to talk about the snake a little bit because the snake would just be laying around the squadron. He'd be up on the desk, and you know, if you left the desk drawer open, one of those metal desks, he would crawl in there and work his way through it. If he came in the next day and wanted to open one of those drawers to get something out, sorry, you come back again when he's out of there. And so it was kind of a cool thing because guys would divert in there and they'd come in and say, hey, you guys have the snake, right? Where's the snake? And they want to pose with a picture of him around their neck or something like that. So we had a squadron party one time, and we had an outside cage for the snake. And so the snake was going to be out there, but we wanted to see him eat something. So Major Steinmiller and I were sent downtown in our flight suits with our sidearms to buy a live chicken. The town was off limits, but we ended up going down and buying a live chicken. I'm not sure how we got it back there in a cage or whatever, but at the squadron party now, we got everybody out there and we put this chicken in the cage, and Ramrod's just laying there, and chicken is running all over and pecking at him and everything. He's not doing anything. Everybody's saying, come on, Ramrod, eat the snake, eat the chicken, eat the chicken. And he, you know, he wasn't interested. He didn't do that stuff in public, I guess. In the prodding and everything, the gate came open and the chicken ran out on the flight line and got hit by the line truck. So the next thing you know, the chicken's on the grill. This is, we took squadron pictures, and I happened to get some copies of them, but these are all the pilots, about 17 or 18 pilots. 5 or 6 of us were first lieutenants, 3 or 4 captains, and some of those were experienced in Europe, had flown the F-100 a lot. Some of them were navigators and came through pilot training about the same time we did. Okay, next one. This is a little more informal picture. That's in the intake. That's Tom Kaiser in the intake, and I'm up on the.
We had 2 Toms,
Yeah.
and they were about the same size and shape and handsomeness, and they flew together a lot. It was quite a show.
Okay, this is the whole squadron. Now I didn't realize how unique this was at the time, but we had squadron maintenance and squadron weapons, all under the command of our squadron commander, Bob Basin. And that worked really smooth. They were invested in the mission. They wrote stuff on the bombs. They worked to give us fast maintenance and fast munitions loads. During our tour there, that was broken apart. They put all the maintenance guys in a separate squadron, all the weapons guys, and the efficiency of the operation noticeably declined. We didn't get the fast turns unless we just happened to get a crew that had once belonged to the squadron, and they were with us and really worked to get us going. So that was kind of a unique unique opportunity. I didn't realize it at the time. Okay, we all lived in we call them hooches. They were just long barracks kind of thing with a hall down the middle. In the middle section, there was a bathroom with, I don't know, 5 or 6 showers, urinals, toilets, and 6 or 7 sinks. And that's, we didn't have sinks in our rooms. The other side of that that bathroom thing was an area we could customize ourselves. And all the squadrons, I think, all had a bar there. So that was our gathering place. And I have this picture because that shows that there are sand-filled revetments around the building, except where that fence is. And they put those revetments there to protect us in case we had rocket attacks. And when they started doing that, somebody had the forethought to say, hey, they found this big kind of a wooden thing, and they towed it up and put it right next to the squadron. And we called it the raft. And then when they started building the revetments, they said, well, you gotta move that raft. Well, we used that for a barbecue grill, sunbathing, socializing, and we didn't want to get rid of it. It was kind of a nice outdoor space. So they said, you gotta get rid of that because we gotta complete that revetment around there. So all of a sudden, some lumber appeared and we made that fence around there and we painted it to match the revetment and they let us keep it. Okay, that's me on the left and my roommate, Tom Kaiser, on the right, and that's the day of his final flight, which was about a month before we left. He and I had been roommates. We were academy classmates, although I didn't really know him at all. We were pilot training classmates at Webb. And he graduated a little ahead of me, and he got an earlier F-100 class. But we flew our last mission together, and then we had a party that night. We had these party suits, and I wish I still had it. I can't remember what happened to it, but it cost about $10 or something to be sewed. And so we wore those over the club. And the going away party was a big deal. We had champagne and steaks, and speeches, if you could speak, you know. So that's in our bar there. I got a couple of the pictures from the bar. There's Gary on the right, and I think that's Denny Fink on the left, or maybe not. And then the guy in the back of the bar is Bob Sabre, and then there's a painting on the wall that our squadron color included red, and so that was a famous velvet painting type of Big Red. And somebody in China would paint that. And we hung that at our bar. You can see the bell. If you walked in with your hat on, somebody would ring the bell, and you'd have to buy that around.
There were lots of big reds in Southeast Asia.
Pardon me?
There were lots of big reds in
I'm sure
Southeast
there were, yeah. The bar itself was built before we got there. It was made out of bricks, and the top is actually a helicopter rotor blade that was firmly affixed there, and it had a light out at the end of it, and it would flash. And these guys consumed more alcohol than entranced by that light. Anyway, we had a lot of good times.
There was a lot of praying that went on in that room too.
And it was a cashless deal. We had a Vietnamese barmaid that was there almost all the time, and she just marked up a chip. I think it was about 25 cents for a beer.
10 cents.
10 cents for a beer, 10 cents for a beer, so you can attach, and then you pay up at the end of the month. We had red velvet curtains. We had that mahogany paneling. We had a bunch of other stuff on there. My younger brother Dale had gotten to Vietnam 6 months before I did. He was Army infantry because he said he liked to hike and camp and shoot guns. So he'd been there actually really fighting the war up close and personal. And toward the end, when I got in country, they pulled him back to the base camp because we didn't both have to be there at the same time. Anyway, I went up to visit him, and he came down to visit me. And it just happened to coincide with a going away party. And, I don't know who it was, but he was there. He got an air-conditioned room with a nice bed, endless shower, stuff that was really pretty rare for him up at Chihuahua. And we came back to the club afterwards, and we're drinking and carrying on. And he looks at me and says, "You guys are fighting a different war than I am." And that was really the truth. Well, there's a couple majors there, Joe Brown and Chuck Chapin. We had a poker table there, and we had I'm not sure there was much poker played, but a couple of us had a continuous gin rummy game going on. So that was it wasn't all drinking at the bar. And there's Gary at the bar with our squadron insignia behind us there. Look a lot younger there.
You could have been younger.
Okay, before I talk about the theme flight, I wanted to lay a couple of war stories that stuck out in my mind. We all started out as wingmen, and we had experienced majors and captains. We had an ex-Bundaberg pilot in the squadron that they really showed us how to do it. And as a lieutenant, my flight commander was a major, Jim Steinmiller, and I flew on his wing several times. And there was a point about 2 or 3 months into the tour, and we're in a close air support mission where there's troops in close proximity, and the forward air controller has us on a restricted heading, and there weren't a lot of lines on the ground like you see out in Kansas where everything's squared up. It's kind of sure it might be a riverbank, but the river is curvy. Anyway, he had us on a restricted heading, and the troops on the right, and he put some smoke in and tells us where to go from that smoke. And I'm following my leader around. He takes spacing and he goes in and drops his bombs. And I drop my bombs, and then the next time around, I'm kind of lining up, and he's rolling in where I'm heading. He's heading toward the troops. And I'm kind of questioning myself. Hey, maybe I got screwed up. Maybe I'm trying to look at my compass, and it was all gyrating because of the G's were pulling and everything. And the display on the dash is kind of screwed up. But I finally was convinced enough that I said, ram right through on lead, go through dry. And this was a big move for a lieutenant talking to a major. But he did go through dry. And I said, we're on the wrong heading. And he acknowledged it. And the FAC had not been paying close enough attention too, because he's kind of responsible. If he's got you on a restricted heading, he must kind of check that we're doing that. Anyway, it all got sorted out, and the major apologized and was embarrassed. I didn't want to embarrass him, but then I started thinking, hey, I better start paying closer attention to how this is done, because I'm going to be leading these things after a while. And that's what came to pass. And then the other war story was I was sitting on the night alert pad, and I think we had a day shift. And we have 3 shifts, day, afternoon, and then night. And so I'm sitting on the alert pad, and again, a lot of us lieutenants ended up there at night. And but that's when the excitement was. If it was going to be exciting, that's when it was going to happen. And so my records, I kept a scrapbook, and it's November 14th at 2:40 in the morning. I'm sure we're dead asleep at that time. And we slept on bunk beds with our flight suits on. I think we had our boots off. But there would be 4 sets of alert flights, 3 F-100 squadrons and the A-37 squadron. So there's 8 guys sitting out there. The phone rings, and everybody wakes up. And whoever can get to the phone first answers, and the answer is scramble the ramrods. So we're on. And my leader is Captain Bob Hopkins, who was should have been in the Super Sabre Society. So we're jumping in our boots and our G-suits, and we're out the door. And our parachutes and helmets are already at the airplane. So we jump in, we start the thing. And we would typically be airborne in 5 minutes from that scramble. Of course, you didn't have any real sophisticated equipment to warm up, or any computers or anything like that. It was all just pretty basic. So we scramble, and we're sent to a forward air controller. I think we were down in 3 Corps, I don't remember the exact. I have the coordinates at home, but it didn't mean much to me. And we're hooked up with a forward air controller called RASH 22. And we get to the target area, and there's other fighters there. So we're told to hold high and set up an orbit. So we set up a holding pattern. There's 2 sets of fighters below us, and there's a set of fighters working the target. And we could see there was a lot action going on, we could make out the special forces camp. There were no flares, so we didn't have to deal with that. But the fighters that were put in the strike at the time were F-4s. Well, some of those F-4s were pretty good, some of the pilots were pretty good, but a lot of them weren't very good. And they weren't nearly as good at bombers as we were. We were pretty well convinced of that. And we watched these guys throw bombs 1,000, 2,000 feet long for the target. And, you know, there's bad guys that are putting fire in on the special forces camp, and you can't hit them. And the FAC was pretty much perturbed by that, and he sent them off after they had expended their ammo. And you know, he's trying to, I can't remember if he was sarcastic or not, but he was displeased. Second set of fighters comes in, so we're going down the step. Second set is another set of F-4s. They throw the bombs all over the place. They can't hit it either. But we're watching this, and we can see, so now it's our turn. And I tried to figure out how this happened, but we had some guys, but in the daytime, flight lead usually carried the 500-pound Mark 82 high drags. He'd go in first, and the wingman would carry the unfitted napalm. Well, some of the leaders didn't want to go in first, in fact. So Hoppy had asked me, do you want to carry the napalm? I said, yes, sir. And I'd like to go. So that meant I would go in first. So as we orbited the target and got set up on this restricted running, I went in first. And I would go as fast as I could without the afterburner. And I'd go as low as I could. So I was typically 50 or 100 feet above the ground, going 500 miles an hour. And I just, you know, peckle up. And the gunners couldn't see you coming because you're so low. And we had our lights off. And so I spread napalm, and the forward air controller was pretty ecstatic about that. Hoppy drops his bombs. We come around and do that again. And I think we just made those 2 passes. So now Hoppy's coming off the target after his last bomb pass. And all of a sudden I look over there, and I'm starting to be ready to roll in. And I look over there, and there's a big flame coming out of his tailpipe. And I said, Ramrod 05, lead, are you all right? Nothing. I said, Ramrod 05, lead, are you okay? Nothing. And so I'm getting kind of concerned. Maybe he's really scrambling, he's on fire, the thing is coming apart, I don't know, but the flame is still coming out of his tail. And on the third query, he responds, yeah, I just lit the burner to draw their ground fire. Oh, it's just as cool as can be. And of course, he succeeded because they're shooting at him. They had some 50 cal sights down there. And you can see the tracers going after him. And so now I'm rolling in with my guns, and I can see where they're shooting from. And so they couldn't see me coming because my lights are out. So I hose them down, I pull off, and I light my burner. He comes around, tracks on them, and the forward air controller is just going, hey, this is great, because we're really hosing the target. And I think it was the third and last pass. I pulled off for my strafe pass, and I was in a 4G pole, and we were restricted to 4Gs at the time. And I look up, and there's a wall of tracers in front of me. I said, this doesn't look good. But I was too late to take any evasive action, so I had nothing hit. So we dodged a bullet on that one. And then we did get called out again, I think at 8 in the morning or something like that for a second flight. But that was the most exciting flight of my career over there. And it felt really good because we got a letter of commendation from the Army. We had really made a difference for them, and they stayed above the bad guys.
Tom won't tell you this, but in RTU after pilot training, he's the top gun. And it didn't stop.
So this is a picture of me on our last flight. You know, you fly your last flight and come in, and since there were actually 3 of us who flew our last flight on that same day, Gary and Hugh Gommel and me. There was another guy, Denny Fink, who got there at the same time as we did, and his wife was kind of worried about him, so he flew his last flight 2 weeks ahead of ours. And that's another story. So there were just 3 of us, and we would taxi off the runway, drop our drag chutes, dearm the guns and stuff, and then we taxi in. Well, our wing, people would meet you out there with Honda 90s with smoke grenades on the back, and tugs and all kinds of vehicles, blazing smoke or spotting color as they go down the taxi. We pull back into the revetments and shut down, and then they would bring us a bottle of champagne, and everybody was out there for that. So these are.
Tom is drinking ginger ale here.
Yeah, right.
How long were your tours?
1 year.
1 year?
Yeah, it was a year, and it didn't make any difference in our story. We weren't going north. We were flying strictly in the south. There were a couple of guys who lived in Laos a little bit, but ours. Granted, this was a low threat environment. They didn't have shoulder mounted SAMs yet, so the threat was very minimal. They had small arms fire, 50 cal, occasionally 37 millimeters. So, you try to stay away from those in the daylight. And a couple of guys shot down.
How many KIAs in your Vanuatu do you remember?
You mean in bad guys?
The year you were there?
I don't know. I kept track of each mission and the bomb damage assessment. Sometimes they give you,
Right.
10 kVA, and a lot of times for the interdiction missions, we're dropping on smoke in the trees, and they'd say 10 suspected fighting positions destroyed or something. Yes, like that.
How many F-100 pilots did you lose?
We lost just one, and that was the Lynn Hoffman. We lost another guy after that. So this is Bob Baisley, and he had flown. Well, he was flying with Hugh Gommel. He was leading Hugh Gommel, I think, and so he came up and participated in the ritual. And
I was at a different base, Van Rang, in '68, a little earlier. The year I was there, I was a boards and decks officer. We lost 4. Good guy.
Okay, next one. Okay, that's Hugh Gommel getting out of his airplane.
He was the only guy who flew his last mission in his airplane.
Yeah.
It was random, what airplane he flew.
So then there's the Silver Fox and Gary.
And yes, my seat was all the way up.
And so then we get out of the airplanes and they hose us down with the fire hoses, and the whole squadron's out there for this thing. And it's usually the end of the day. There's the 3 musketeers there. And
That's great.
yeah. And there's with Colonel Baisley with us. He was a notable guy. He came in 2 or 3 months into our tour, and I remember him because he came into the squadron and he was being shown, or he had been checked out down with the flight line of the squadron. And so he came into our squadron, and the ops officer was taking him around, showing him, introducing people. And I was doing some odd job and went into the building, and he walked in and he said, Colonel Baisley, this is Tom Brandon. And he said, "Hi, Tom, how are you? I understand your wife Gail's living in Hawaii." And, he had memorized everybody's name before that. So that's kind of. Well, let me say one more thing, because it didn't make it into that thing there, but this was, just old memories are probably, they're not accurate all the time. We remember things differently, but as I reflect on my career, this was the most exciting, fun time in my whole flying career. Probably the most fun and excitement I've ever had with my clothes on.